Now we'll talk about probably my favorite ratio of all ratios, or this is a set of ratios, the Dupont Framework. It's a very powerful way of chaining ratios together to tell you a lot about a company. But before we get to the Dupont Framework, let's talk about, for a minute, about this ratio, return on equity. Return on equity is calculated by dividing net income by stockholders' equity. Whenever we say return, we're typically talking about net income. And return on equity is stockholders' equity, of course. Here's the thing. Sometimes we think, oh, now I'm going to have to memorize this. Or you could just say it. Return, that generally represents net income. Equity is equity. We take net income, we divide it by stockholders' equity. What is it? It's a measure of how much profit per dollar invested. So if you invested $1 in a company, how much did you earn on that dollar of investment? So return on equity is a return on your equity investment. For example, let's take a look at this. For X9 and X8, we take net income divided by stockholders' equity for this company. 13% in X8, 9% in X9. And you look at that and say it went down. And what's your first question? What's the obvious question? Why did my return on equity go down? What happened between X8 and X9 that caused my return on equity to go down? The Dupont Framework provides an answer to the why question. Let's take a look at the Dupont Framework. It takes return on equity and breaks it down into 3 different ratios: profitability, efficiency, and leverage. In other words, a company's return on equity is affected by more than profitability. It's affected by profitability, how efficient you are at using your assets, and then how did you pay for those assets, with liabilities or with owner's equity. So let's take a look at each one of these 3 ratios individually. Return on sales, we've seen that before. Return on sales is how much profit is generated from each dollar's worth of sales. Asset turnover, how much sales are generated by each dollar's worth of assets. And then this leverage ratio, and remember there are multiple different leverage ratios. This one is assets to equity. What portion of your asset is funded by equity? That tells me how much debt I have. It's another way to say how much debt have I got. I chain these 3 ratios together to get components of my return on equity. Now you can see here, using just basic math, these will cancel out and these will cancel out, giving me income over equity, which is my return on equity. But there is information to be gained in these 3 components. Now I want us to think for a second about what a business does. The Dupont Framework guides us through what a business does. A business gets financing to buy assets. They can get their financing through debt or equity. This specific ratio measures equity. I borrow money either from owners or from lenders to buy assets. And why do I buy assets? To generate sales. I don't buy assets. I don't get assets just to have assets. My objective as a business is to use those assets to generate sales. And why do I want to generate sales? Because sales will result in net income. So the Dupont Framework is very good at telling us, what does a business do? We borrow money to buy assets. We buy assets to generate sales. We generate sales to generate income. So I take my income, divide it by the portion of my funding that is provided by shareholders to determine what's my return on the equity investment. The Dupont Framework is a very nice way to tell me, how am I making money for my shareholders? Is it because I'm profitable? Is it because I'm efficient? Or is it because I'm using leverage to leverage that investment to provide a higher return on equity? The Dupont Framework, an awesome series of ratios that reflect what a business does. Borrow money to buy assets to generate sales to generate income.